Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I'm back with property sourcing part 2, the Q&A. And so if you haven't seen the first part already, I'm just going to link it up in the cards for you there just so that you can revert back to it maybe before you go on to watch this video. So as I did in the first part of this Q&A, I'm just going to go through the remainder of your questions and I'm going to be referring to my phone as that's where I'll be reading the questions from. So yeah, let's get into it. Right, so question number 1, how to convince investors to trust you when you have no reputation or experience. To be honest, simply all you need to do is basically learn how to package deals properly, okay? You need to know how to include figures as well as like descriptions about the property deals that you find. This is the only way that you're going to actually be able to show to investors that you know what you're doing and you're not just an amateur. So when I say talk figures when packaging deals for investors, obviously you're going to tell them like, you know, how much the property is going for, so how much you sourced it for, but as well as that you want to talk about things like the rental yield that the property can gain and return on investment if you're able to calculate that, things like, you know, how much below market value you got the property for if it was BMV. You also want to mention things like, you know, if the property needs some refurb work, like what is that refurb work and how much it's going to cost, like an estimate of that. You can also mention monthly cash flow in the sense of, you know, what's going to be left over for the investor after, you know, the rent comes in and after all the expenses have gone up for the month, so what they're going to have left to play with or pocket essentially. When you include all of these numbers and facts in a deal package, it lets the investor know that, you know, you're a serious person and you've actually done your research in terms of, you know, finding them a good deal. Without figures and simply just a description of the property in terms of, you know, its location, the amenities that may be nearby, you may come across somebody that's not done it before and, you know, a bit of a newbie. So as long as you include some figures in your deal sourcing packages, I think you should be fine. And secondly, when dealing with investors, you want to come across as confident in yourself. Like, do not show that you are somebody that does not have any experience in property sourcing. Even if you haven't done any deals yet and this is potentially going to be your first, you do not want to show or let the investor know that, because if you don't have confidence in yourself and you come across as quite amateur and don't know what you're doing, then why is the investor going to trust you and want to work with you? And as I've mentioned already, definitely showing facts and figures as well as like the descriptive elements of the property deals that you find is going to be able to give you that confidence to be able to speak to investors, because obviously you've got numbers to back up what you are saying to show that actually these are deals that I am bringing you. Question number 2, what are the top 5 things to consider or prioritize when looking for a property? Another person asked a similar question in the sense of do's and don'ts of what to look out for in a property. I don't feel like this is specifically a property sourcing question and more of like what to look out for in terms of an investment property, and so I'm going to answer it in that way. First of all, you want to focus on the numbers and not really like the aesthetics. Like, this is an investment property, it's not where you are going to live, and so you do not want to get too like wrapped up in terms of, you know, how pretty a place looks. You want to be thinking about, do the numbers stack up? Like, is this property going to be profitable? That's what you need to be thinking about. You need to be thinking about, you know, the kind of rental yield you get on the property, the kind of demands that, you know, the property is going to get. Basically, if it's an area whereby people do tend to rent a lot, these are the things you need to focus on rather than aesthetics of a property. Of course, you don't want to get somewhere that is, you know, completely a dump and whereby like you can't revive it, or where it's going to cost you like a fortune to try and bring it back up to scratch to be able to be in a rentable condition. But what I am saying is that, you know, the looks or how pretty or how beautiful a place is not the most important thing. It's the numbers. Number 2, you need to make sure that the location that you're looking to buy in makes sense for the strategy that you're trying to implement. So is it a buy-to-let strategy? Is it a HMO one? You need to make sure that the location that you're trying to buy the property in is fit for purpose for that. You don't want to buy a property that maybe you plan to use as a HMO in an area whereby HMO is not really a big thing, because at the end of the day, you may find that you don't have tenants to put in that property. And so you want to do your proper research, do proper due diligence, and make sure that basically there's good, you know, rental demand, as I already said previously. Are you buying in the area because, you know, there's universities nearby and therefore you're relying on the fact that, you know, students will be renting out your property? Is it a place whereby it's quite industrial and there's a lot of, you know, businesses that are located there, and therefore naturally people that, you know, work in the area will need to rent out a property in that area? You know, you need to focus on basically getting, you know, a profitable location. A location that is profitable in terms of, you know, the strategy that you're trying to implement. Number 3, when buying an investment property, you want to buy in an area that is, you know, reasonably close enough for you to travel to, and that is just so that you can keep an eye on it and do inspections from time to time. Now, when I say reasonably close, like that can look, you know, different for different people. Reasonably close to you could be 1 hour, reasonably close to you could be, you know, 2 or 3 hours. But yeah, you just want to buy a property that you can reasonably get to, because even if you give your property to you know, a letting agent to manage for you, I strongly advise that you also go and do your inspections from time to time. I believe the maximum number of times you can visit a property in a year is 4 times. And with letting agents, I think they only do like, obviously the first one to move with the tenants, and then one sort of like mid-tenancy, and then the final one when they're moving out. So yeah, that was what I faced with my tenants. Well, that's what I faced with my letting agents last year. I wasn't really pleased with the fact that, you know, they didn't visit the property a bit more often. And so yeah, I definitely say get somewhere that you can reasonably travel to and, you know, inspect the property from time to time yourself also, because in that way you'll be able to keep an eye on, you know, how people are looking after the property, and, you know, just keep on top of things basically, so that at the end of the tenancy you don't find that, you know, your property's been trashed and, you know, you're left with all this kind of, you know, crazy stuff to deal with. Number 4, when going on property viewings, you want to pay meticulous attention to detail. Like, use your senses. What can you see? What can you smell? What can you hear? What can you touch? Like, these things are so important. Are there any signs of like damp or mold? You know, is there a sign that maybe there was a leak in the property at some point? You know, what does the roof look like? What are the walls like? Are they thin? Like, all those kind of things. Like, can you hear the neighbors, you know, through the walls? Like, you want to pay attention to all these kind of things because they're so important. Like, you don't want to buy a property and you thought, you know, it was so good, it was in such good condition, and by the time you've completed on a purchase, like, you find that, oh, there's mold in the property, or there was a damp issue that wasn't dealt with, and so you're gonna have to fork out money to deal with that. You don't want to be the one to buy a property under the false illusion that basically by the time you complete on the sale that, you know, you'll be able to get tenants in, you know, within the next couple of weeks, when really it's going to cost you some time and some money to get the property up to scratch and to be able to comply with the regulations required for a property that is going out for rent. Number 5, you want to get a property survey done. Now, I'm not talking about the one that, you know, some mortgage lenders will do when deciding, you know, how much to give you as a mortgage for a property. I'm talking about the one where you instruct somebody to do a structural property survey to ensure that they can pick up on any structural issues that the property may have, if there's any signs of movement, if there's any issues like with the roof, or, you know, anything that needs to be done basically for the property. You want to make sure that you do that. They cost anything from £300, and I just feel like they're so crucial to be able to pick up on any issues that the property may have, so that you don't find yourself in a bigger problem when you've bought a property and it's going to cost you like thousands of pounds to fix. On to question number 3. So this person's just said good sites. So good sites, so obviously Rightmove, Zoopla, you've got prime location, you've got Gumtree where you can find private listings. So yeah, there's a number of like property sites that you can look up online, and to be honest, you can even just start with Google. Question number 4, again, someone's just said keywords. So I suppose keywords when you're looking on some of these property search sites. So in the keyword section, you can search up, you know, properties that need modernization, refurb. You can look up no chain, vacant properties. Like, those are the kind of keywords that you want to look up when sourcing properties, especially when trying to get B&V deals. Next question. Which areas are better value for money? So I actually did 2 videos recently talking about, you know, top locations to buy in that are affordable and basically quite cheap, but also have a good return on investment. And so, like, in terms of like the cheapest areas to buy in that are really good in terms of like rental yield, I'd say look up north, so in places like Nottingham, you know, Sheffield, Leeds. And if you want to go back closer to home, like in terms of like maybe outskirts of London, I'd say somewhere like Clacton-on-Sea, Maidenhead, Ashford. Like, those are good places to also buy. So it kind of depends on what's more important to you. Is it like proximity to where you live, or where you can get like a higher rental yield? Whichever it is, I'm going to link those 2 videos up in the card so you can refer to them. Question number 6, where do investors find property sources? So you might want to refer to the first part of this Q&A, because I basically answered like the question on, you know, where sources can find investors, and it's basically the same location. So you can do like, you know, social media, join property groups on like Facebook and LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn have like groups now. You can do networking events. So although there's no like face-to-face, meetings are still taking place online on places like Zoom, and there's always word of mouth as well. So if an investor is looking for a sourcer, they'll be having conversation with, you know, friends, colleagues, and, you know, those friends and colleagues may know of a sourcer, and yeah, it just basically works like that really. And now for the final question, How do you know the deal is a good deal as an investor? To be honest, so there's quite a few points here. So the first is buying at a good price. So whether you're going to buy below market value or at market value price, you just want to make sure that you try not to overpay where you can. Obviously, it's going to depend on where the market's at, but I definitely say buying below market value or at, market value price is a good place to start. Secondly, and even more importantly, you want to make sure that the numbers stack up. And so you want to do your calculations on rental yield and also return on investment. This is how to really determine that a property is worth putting your money into. And finally, if there's any refurb work required, once you complete the work, will the property increase in value, or can you get more rent for the property after you've done the work? These are all the factors that you need to consider as an investor to determine if a property is a good deal at the end of the day. So guys, that brings me to the end of all of the questions that you guys have asked. Hopefully you've gotten the answers to your questions. If I've missed anything out, or you feel like you have any other questions, please do drop them down in the comments and I'll also answer those questions as best as I can. If you've enjoyed the video and gained value from it, please do give it a thumbs up, and please do also remember to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. So thank you for watching, and I'll catch you later. Bye.